Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. Obligatory backstory. Many of you have probably heard of families with strong hierarchy structures, typically with the eldest having the most influence. My family fits this mold, except our parents are drug-addicted deadbeats, so my oldest sister, 33F, let's call her Rebecca, raised all five of us. She's the undisputed boss of the family. When Rebecca says jump, everyone asks, how high? The focus of this story is my youngest sister, 22F, we'll call her Emma. Most of us have at least a few memories with our mother before she lost it, except Emma. For her, Rebecca is the only mom she's ever known, and Rebecca knows exactly how to exploit that. All of us left our parents' house as soon as we turned 18, except Rebecca. She waited until Emma and our brother were in their mid-teens before moving across the country. She quickly found jobs and housing for all of us in the same state. Emma begged for years to move in with Rebecca, but she always refused, claiming someone had to take care of our father and that she and her new husband needed privacy. That changed when Rebecca got pregnant. She finally allowed Emma to move in, and she's been there for the past 2.5 years, helping out. Now to the story. Rebecca's in-laws wanted to visit for a couple of weeks, so Emma had to stay with me during that time so they could use her room. It's worth noting that Rebecca didn't ask or inform me about this arrangement, she just dropped Emma off. One day Emma saw me studying for my master's degree and mentioned how she always wanted to go to college. Our conversation went like this. Me: so why don't you? Emma: oh, I talked to Rebecca about it, but she said not everyone is the college type and that I wouldn't have time to work, study, and take care of Lily, the niece, at the same time. Plus, it's expensive. Me: most people work and study simultaneously and she could put Lily in daycare. I'm sure it wouldn't be much more expensive than what she's already paying you. Emma: she doesn't pay me, she already provides food and shelter, and if I need money, I just pick up a shift at work. This is how I discovered that my sister wasn't just babysitting, but also cleaning the entire house for free every day. She was only working 8 hours a week at her regular job because she was too busy taking care of our niece. Long story short, it took weeks to convince Emma to apply to community college and then more weeks for the actual process, but she finally got confirmation she would start in September. All of this was done behind Rebecca's back. Emma planned to tell everyone the next time we got together, which would be on Independence Day. But before that could happen, Rebecca gathered everyone at her house to announce she was pregnant again. Emma started crying because she realized she wouldn't be allowed to go to college. Rebecca got deeply hurt and offended that Emma had planned this behind her back. I intervened. Our other siblings chimed in. It quickly turned into a mess. How could you do this to me? Rebecca yelled at Emma. Who's going to take care of the babies? I can't believe you'd be so selfish. If you like Sarah so much, go stay with her. These were just some of the things she said. She kicked Emma and me out, and Emma stayed with me until they made peace. Both of our other siblings reached out, one to say I should have minded my own business and the other to tell me she was on my side but wouldn't say anything openly. After that, Emma moved back in with Rebecca and didn't go to college, but they agreed she would get paid $8 an hour and be allowed to take more shifts at her job until the baby was born, then go to a real college after the child turned one. I know it's messed up, but all of them, especially Emma, worship Rebecca like a god. I waited a year to act on my revenge, making sure Emma had saved enough money to live on her own. The revenge. First, I researched the legality of paying a homeless person in food and shelter. In the US, depending on the state, it's legal as long as you don't cross the line where the person becomes an employee. For example, you can give the person a list of tasks you want done, but you can't specify that it has to be completed in a certain time frame. You also can't require someone to be somewhere at a specific time. You can ask, but not demand. It comes down to word choice. You also have to comply with rental laws. If local laws require 30 days notice for tenants, you must give 30 days notice to this person as well. I had proof of the entire situation, including several screenshots of Rebecca admitting to not paying Emma, not allowing her to move out or get a job, and kicking her out whenever she wanted. All these technicalities seemed pointless since no one would sue her. But that didn't matter. I just wanted to make sure her boss knew that if she were to be sued, it would be an open and shut case. Rebecca works for a civil rights attorney's office, so discovering she has a modern-day slave would likely get her fired. I could have created a burner email and sent everything to her boss, but then they'd explain to her why she was getting fired and that would get Emma and me in trouble. So what did I do? Rebecca was always complaining about one of her bosses who hated her and had tried to get her fired for ages. I went to the company website, found the woman, thankfully she was the only Vanessa who worked there, and located her on Instagram and Facebook. She had a post tagging her yoga studio. I created a membership at that studio and spent weeks figuring out which class Vanessa attended. I finally found her and started going to yoga every Tuesday and Friday at 8 a.m. for months, slowly building a friendship. Around 3 months in, Vanessa asked to follow me on Instagram. I was prepared, having deleted the few pictures I had with Rebecca. After 9 months, when our friendship was solid, I brought up the crazy coincidence that I discovered she worked with Rebecca. Before things could get awkward, I said, "It's ironic that she works for civil rights, considering, everything." That caught Vanessa's attention. I told her everything and showed her every screenshot. I could practically see her eyes shining. They had their own history that's not important to the story. All you need to know is, Rebecca is awful, and Vanessa wants revenge as much as I do. I explained Emma's situation and why Rebecca could never know about this. This is why befriending Vanessa was so crucial. If I had just sent them the proof and explained the situation, they probably would have ignored it. This was a legitimate reason to fire her, and they wouldn't risk firing her for a minor mistake and potentially getting sued. I sent Vanessa the files with her promise that Rebecca wouldn't hear about this, but she needed it to convince the other owner, who was the reason Rebecca hadn't been fired yet. 2 months later, Rebecca was fired for minor mistakes, tardiness, and general poor productivity. It may seem like a small victory, but I loved visiting her during the 4 months she was unemployed. She looked so tired and miserable all the time since she had no money to pay for a babysitter, and Emma was away at college, so she actually had to take care of her children. Moral of the story, check on your siblings. They might be living in a modern slavery arrangement. The next one is an entitled people story. I never thought owning an RV would turn my life into a suburban nightmare, but here we are. It all started when my wife and I decided to buy a modest 25-foot RV for weekend getaways. We'd always dreamed of exploring the great outdoors, and with our kids getting older, it seemed like the perfect time. We live in a quiet neighborhood with decent-sized lots, so parking the RV in our driveway wasn't an issue, or so I thought. Enter Karen, our next-door neighbor from hell. The day after we brought the RV home, I was outside washing it when I heard a shrill voice behind me. "Excuse me, what do you think you're doing?" I turned around to see Karen, hands on her hips, glaring at me like I'd just committed a capital offense. Just washing my new RV," I replied, confused by her hostility. "You can't park that monstrosity here, it's against the rules," she screeched. I was taken aback. "What rules?" "We don't have an homeowners association, and the city allows RV parking on private property." Karen's face turned an alarming shade of red. "Well, we should have an homeowners association to prevent eyesores like this. It's ruining the neighborhood's aesthetics," I tried to reason with her. "Look, Karen, I understand it's a change, but it's my property and I'm not breaking any laws," she huffed. "We'll see about that," and stormed off. I thought that was the end of it, but oh boy, was I wrong. The next day, I came home from work to find a bright orange sticker on my RV. Violation: oversized vehicle must be removed within 24 hours. I was furious. I knew this had to be Karen's doing, but I also knew there was no such rule in our neighborhood. I immediately called the city's code enforcement office. After explaining the situation, the officer sighed. "Sir, we've been getting complaints about your RV all day, but you're right, there's no violation. Someone's been impersonating a city official." I thanked him and hung up, my blood boiling. I marched over to Karen's house and knocked on the door. When she answered, I held up the fake violation sticker. "Care to explain this, Karen?" She feigned innocence. "I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just glad the city is finally doing something about that eyesore." "Cut the act," I snapped. "The city confirmed this is fake. You could get in serious trouble for impersonating an official." Karen's face paled, but she quickly recovered. "You can't prove anything. Now get off my property before I call the police." I left, but I wasn't about to let this go. The next day, I installed security cameras around my property, making sure to capture any activity near the RV. It didn't take long for Karen to make her next move. 2 days later, my cameras caught her approaching the RV at 2 a.m. armed with a can of spray paint. I watched in disbelief as she started to vandalize my property. I called the police immediately. They arrived just as Karen was finishing her masterpiece. Crude stick figures and the words, "trailer trash," spray painted across the side of my RV. The officers caught her red-handed, or should I say paint-handed. Karen tried to play the victim, claiming I had threatened her and the RV was a danger to the neighborhood. The officers weren't buying it. Karen was arrested for vandalism and filing false reports. As they led her away, she screamed, "You'll pay for this! I'll sue you for everything you've got!" I thought that would be the end of it, but Karen was true to her word. A week later, I was served with a lawsuit. She was suing me for emotional distress and decreasing property values due to the RV. I knew her case was ridiculous, but I still had to take it seriously. I hired a lawyer who assured me we had a strong defense. The day of the court hearing arrived, Karen showed up with a sleazy-looking lawyer who seemed more interested in his phone than the case. My lawyer presented evidence of Karen's harassment, including the security camera footage and testimony from the code enforcement officer about the fake violation stickers. Karen's lawyer tried to argue that the RV violated unwritten neighborhood standards, but the judge wasn't having it. He dismissed Karen's case and ordered her to pay my legal fees, but the judge wasn't done. He turned to Karen and said, "Ma'am, your actions show a blatant disregard for your neighbor's property rights and the law. I'm ordering you to attend anger management classes and perform 100 hours of community service." Karen's face turned that familiar shade of red as she sputtered in disbelief. As we left the courthouse, my lawyer patted me on the back. "Congratulations. It's not often we see justice served so swiftly in these neighbor disputes." I felt relieved, but I knew this wasn't over. Living next to Karen would never be peaceful. Sure enough, when I got home, I found Karen in her yard glaring at me. "This isn't over," she hissed. "I'll make your life hell as long as that RV is here." I sighed, realizing I had a choice to make. I could continue this war with Karen, or I could be the bigger person. The next day, I invited all the neighbors over for a barbecue. To my surprise, everyone came. Even Karen, though she stood in the corner nursing a drink and glaring at everyone. I addressed the group. "I know my RV has caused some controversy," I began. "I want you all to know that I hear your concerns. While I have the right to park it here, I also want to be a good neighbor." I unveiled my plan. I would build a fence to shield the RV from view and plant some trees for additional screening. I also offered to help organize a neighborhood beautification project. To my amazement, the neighbors loved the idea. Even Karen seemed to soften a bit. Over the next few months, things changed. The fence went up, the trees were planted, and the neighborhood came together to clean up the local park. Karen, to everyone's shock, even volunteered to help. One day, as I was working in my yard, Karen approached me. She looked uncomfortable but determined. I owe you an apology," she said stiffly. "I overreacted about the RV. Your solutions have been acceptable." I was stunned but managed to reply, "Thank you, Karen, I appreciate that." She nodded curtly and walked away. It wasn't exactly warm and fuzzy, but it was progress. As I stood there watching Karen retreat to her house, I couldn't help but smile. Who would have thought that an RV could cause so much drama and ultimately bring a neighborhood together? In the end, I kept my RV, Karen kept her pride, mostly, and our little corner of the world became a bit more neighborly. And if you ask me, that's a win-win situation. So if you ever find yourself in a battle with a neighborhood, Karen, remember, sometimes the best revenge is killing them with kindness, and maybe a well-placed security camera or two. The next one is a petty revenge story. I, 39M, took my daughters, 5 and 2, to the local children's museum. They had an exhibit where you could type in a message and it would translate into 5 or 6 different languages and speak it back like a native speaker of that language. My kids are playing with this and pretending they are working on the input keyboard like mommy and daddy at work and laughing at the funny sounds coming from this little computer thing, when this 10-ish-year-old butthead with a shaved head and sticky hands comes up and starts pushing buttons on the display. I ask him politely to wait. We are almost done and he can have it soon. He took that as an invitation to push my girl's hands out of the way so he could type better. I asked him if he could share so everyone can enjoy it. He ignored me and squeezed into the 1-inch gap in front of the stool my daughter was using to reach the display. I told the kid we were here first and he wasn't being very nice while hitting the clear button to erase everything he just typed. He let out a caveman-like grunt and started typing again. I hit the clear button again and erased everything. It was a juvenile test of wills after that. I just kept tapping the clear button so he couldn't type anything. Nothing he was putting in was getting said by the translator. I kept tapping the clear button as he kept typing. He started swatting at my hand and arm and whimpering, "Stop it!" I kept tapping the clear button. There was no way this scrawny 50-elb when soaking wet kid was getting my Popeye-esque forearms to budge from that clear button. I kept telling the clear button. After what was a cross between a grunt and a cry crossed the lips of this little Play-Doh and ham sandwich-smelling turd, I leaned in close and whispered to him, "Sucks when people don't want to share, doesn't it?" He left to go bother some other kid or wear shoes while jumping on someone else's couch or add a cha-cha-cha to the birthday song or whatever it is he did for fun. My girls got to continue pretending to type at work and make the machine say funny phrases. The next one is a malicious compliance story. Karen manager, store manager. A bit of background, I used to work at a popular grocery store that's known for rolling over for customers. I started working for this grocery store during my gap year before college. I wanted to save up some money before taking on the crippling burden that is student loans. When I started, the job was easy enough and the vast amount of people were kind. I didn't have to deal with a lot of Karens and the hours were flexible. I really enjoyed my coworkers and managers. Life seemed great. That is until our department got a new boss. I don't know what it is about new bosses, but they always have to go on a power trip to consolidate power and to show everyone they mean business. Our Karen manager went around the department and started criticizing people for the stupidest things. Even if we were doing our job correctly, she would show up and tell us to work faster, and we were stealing company time. We all hated her, but she is our boss, so we just tried to do what we were told. I pride myself on finding the quickest and most efficient way to do a job. Thanks for the upbringing, Mom. I applied this to any of my duties for the day. It just so happened that the end of the day was coming up, and we had to return products that customers left behind. Non-perishable, of course. I was voluntold to go do it. This wasn't an issue as I had done this plenty of times before. I went about my task and finished in about 10 minutes. The second I got done, my KM called me into her office, and the following conversation ensued. Karen manager. Close the door. Now do you know why I called you in here? Me. No? Karen manager. I am trying to improve efficiency in the department and you took way too long to do those go-backs. I won't tolerate people slacking off in my department. Do you understand? Me. I wasn't slacking off, trying to defend myself. I was just cutting me off, she reiterated, Karen manager. Do you understand? Knowing I was being railroaded, I just sighed and said yes. Karen manager. To ensure you don't slack off again, you are forbidden from doing any more go-backs. I don't care if the store manager tells you otherwise. This is my department, and you will do as I say. I'm the boss. I get a smile on my face as I realize what she just said. I nod my head and reply, me. Understood. I won't do go-backs no matter what. My Karen manager replied with an umbrage smile and said, Karen manager, good. Now go back to work and don't forget what I said. I'm the boss. I turned around so she couldn't see my crap-eating grin and said, me. Don't worry, message received loud and clear. A few days go by without incident until I finally get a chance to put my malicious compliance into action. The front desk supervisor seems that the go-back cart is full and asks me to return the products. I smile and say, me. Sorry, supervisor. Karen manager said I was wasting time and I am no longer allowed to return products. The supervisor gives me a weird look but just shrugs and tells another coworker to do it instead. This cycle continues on for the next month. One day, the store manager happens to be manning the front desk. The end of the day rolls around and he looks at me and says, Store manager, hey OP, we have a lot of go-backs and I need you to return them. Me. Sorry, store manager. I'm not allowed to do go-backs anymore on account of slacking off. Store manager looks frustrated and says, Store manager, I don't care if you are allowed to or not. I am telling you to take these back. Me. Sorry, store manager. Karen manager told me I am not to do any more go-backs no matter what, and I'd better follow her orders. Karen manager told me that this is her department and that she is the boss. Store manager looked pissed and stormed into the manager's office. A few minutes later, store manager called Karen manager to his office over the intercom. Karen manager came waddling out of her office and went into store manager's office. The door closed and we could all hear muffled yelling. After about 10 minutes, the door opened and Karen manager shuffled out. She glared daggers at me and told me to come to her office. I happily complied and said, me. Yes, Karen manager, how can I be of assistance? Karen manager, you are allowed to do go-backs again, that is all. I smirked and left her office, happy that I could put a Karen in her place. Update. I'm surprised a lot of people enjoyed my story. I will continue sharing stories from this job and a hospital I used to work at. Hope you all enjoy them. Update Part 2. I forgot about Rule 8. Hopefully OP doesn't really count. Everything else should be fixed. The next one is an entitled people story. I just witnessed, quite possibly, the most entitled interaction of my life. I-40F was at my local convenience store talking to the owner's daughter. She needed help with homework and was asking everyone if they could help her understand it. Shakespeare isn't for everyone, but is something I thoroughly enjoyed at school. I am in there almost daily, so they know me. In walks this woman, probably around my age, and she begins gathering items and dumping them on the counter, completely disregarding other customers who were already at it. This goes on for a few minutes and then she goes to pay. At this point, the clerk is serving someone else, and this woman interrupts the transaction and states, "My items are on the counter, so you shouldn't be serving anyone else as I'm clearly waiting to be served." I always believed that in order to be served in a store, you had to physically be in a line or at the counter. Maybe I'm wrong. The man being served smiles at this woman and says something along the lines of he's buying smokes and needs 30 seconds to complete his transaction, and she can just wait. This led to much huffing and puffing from the woman. She then turns to me and says, "Can you believe the audacity of some people?" I can't help but giggle before I reply with, "No, but I do really appreciate irony." She didn't get the joke. By now the guy has left, and the clerk is ringing up her items and putting them into bags. He finishes and tells her the total, which was $30 something. She tells him he will take $25 because that's all she has. He tells her he will willingly take the $25, providing she removes sufficient items to ensure it covers her bill. Introduce tantrum. Stage right. I need everything. You can't deprive me of my needs. Who do you think you are? I'm calling my husband. The clerk doesn't miss a beat and replies with, "Make sure he brings his wallet." Now the kid and I have completely forgotten about Shakespeare and are enjoying the theater production unfolding in front of us. Out comes her phone and she's scrolling furiously whilst repeating, "Just wait until he gets here." Again, the clerk doesn't miss a beat and says, "I have no other choice but to wait. My shift doesn't end for another 3 hours. She literally stamps her feet while shouting, "But it's only $10. I'm almost at the point of having to put my fist in my mouth to stifle my laugh. This woman calls her husband and puts the phone on speaker. He answers and she puts on this really pitiful whiny voice. "Baby, I'm at this store and the clerk is holding me and 2 other females hostage. You need to come and rescue us." This guy must be all too familiar with Hidwife's antics and says, "You can't really be held hostage and be allowed to use your phone. So either you didn't have enough money or you're trying to buy alcohol without ID." I didn't stifle the laughter, and now this woman has 3 people openly laughing at her. She has to sheepishly admit it was the former. Her husband then says, "If you leave the chips, candy, and soda behind that you don't need, and that we have more than enough of in the house, I'm sure you'll have enough money." She started to protest, and her husband uttered, "I've told you about doing this crap. Say one more word and I'm canceling your birthday." She stamped her foot again as she hung up and told the clerk to remove the suggested items, and she does have enough to cover the bill. As she is about to leave, she actually asks that no one posts about this on Reddit. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.